Move on to the next game. Uh, it sucks that we don't get to see Jaden, but the Chicago Bears are heading to Washington, 4-2 versus 5-2. Uh, like I said, no Jaden Daniels likely with that rib injury. Last I heard, he was week to week. Chicago's favored by 2.5 at this point. Marcus Mariota did some good things, albeit against a really banged up Carolina defense. So I'm not going to hold too much stock in that. Uh, Chicago, only thing I'll say, injuries could be an issue this week. Our secondary is pretty banged up. Tyreek, Kyler Gordon, and Jaquan Brisker, all questions going into this week. But beyond that, I do think we'll be able to get a pass rush against Mariota. I think we'll be able to handle their run offense. I think Chicago can handle this game without Jaden Daniels. I would have loved to see Caleb versus Jaden. I think everyone else would have as well. Me and Pat, when Pat has some time, we will actually talk about the Bears at the halfway point. So we'll do a deeper dive on the Chicago Bears halfway through the season. But any quick takes on your end, any questions you have? I'm going to go with Chicago. Give me the points just because Jaden's out. But yeah,
I like the one spot I like stat I saw was Marcus Mariota has been able to score the ball against Chicago in years past. Obviously, playing with the Falcons a couple of years ago, was able to throw 2 touchdowns. Then
sure.
he's a guy that can still run the football. Obviously, we haven't seen him play in a couple of years. He used to be able to run the football. I do kind of like him just in terms of if they were to be able to get the ball down into the red zone, if you want to put a little value on it as an anytime touchdown scorer, just with the way he is able to get out of the pocket, and maybe he is able to run one in from 8-10 yards out, 8 to 5 yards out. Who knows? I do lean the Bears here. Just obviously it got no Jaden Daniels. The Commanders defense actually has played better as of late in the past couple of weeks, but I mean a blow like that to a team, who knows what's going to be happening. I mean, we could see Brian Robinson
Yeah.
getting really limited in the backfield and them struggling to move the ball down the field to already not the best weapons in the world.
And Jonathan Allen, he was out last week. Obviously, he's out for the year, but
Mm.
I mean, it's obviously going to be much more felt against Chicago's offense as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, compared to Carolina, Marcus Mariota looked pretty good coming in for relief of Jaden Daniels. Like, granted, it was against Carolina, and Carolina's defense can't stop anybody. Um, I thought the spot was awesome for Carolina last week, and boy, was I wrong. They still suck. Um, so I I don't know. With Mariota, it's I definitely lean the Bears. The market's interesting because the markets say the Bears are favored by 1.5 points. Um, and the Commanders are at home, so really the market feels like it's saying, like, on a neutral field the Bears are probably you know 3 points better, 3.5 points better than a Jaden Danielsless Commanders team. That seems a little light, and I
Yeah.
wonder if the market's weighting Mariota as just at this point maybe not that much of a downgrade, just because the way that Mariota's strengths and I guess Jaden Daniels' strengths kind of tie together. They don't need to change much of the offense. And you mentioned
Yeah.
the guys banged up on defense for the Bears. Maybe some of those guys get a little bit healthier coming out of the bye. Um, I think it's just an intriguing line from from a team without their starting quarterback, and the Bears are only a point favored. That
Yeah.
almost makes me wonder if the market weights
I
the
mean,
Commanders
And just
as a
and
better
just read
better
just
yeah.
just
football
look
team.
just looking at that from 1,000 feet above Turtle. I mean, just in terms of they're going to be having Mariota in there, probably some questions and moving the ball. If Chicago's defense is going to kind of focus in on trying
Yeah.
to stop the run, I do kind of like the under at 44 and probably and sprinkle on Commanders at under 21 team total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
where the downfall is going to be is on the offensive side of the ball for the Commanders.
The Eberflus versus rejuvenated Cliff Kingsbury, I guess, like from
Yeah.
coach to coach matchup, I think is going to be really intriguing. I'm very curious to see what type of game plan Cliff comes out with.
Yeah.
I feel like if they were to come out and try to establish the run, I like the
Exactly.
Bears
Yeah.
front seven personally.
But that's the
I don't
weakest.
think
Our run defense is the weakest aspect of our defense.
is
Our
it
run
really?
defense.
I
Yeah.
that shocks me because I like their front seven players. I don't know any of the numbers behind it, but that's a little bit shocking to me. I know Joe Mixon earlier in the year, I think had a good game up until he got hurt against the Bears.
hmm
Um,
hmm
that surprises me actually that they're weak against the run.
Yeah.
Um,
Per PFF, we got the lowest. Our lowest grade is in run defense. We're a good
hmm,
tackling team. Good coverage. Great coverage team. I think you mentioned
yeah,
a
I
couple
knew
of weeks
that
ago
one. Yeah,
one of the best. But obviously, with the injuries, anything can really happen. Um,
yeah, that's really intriguing. I'm not going to say I'm going to run to the window and bet the Commanders as a point underdog. What I maybe do
uh,
like in this game, if you can find another team to pair it
Robinson.
with, is actually it may be teasing the Commanders up to like 6.5 points and maybe teasing them up to 7.5 or 8. Um,
Sure.
I could see that and you can find another team to pair it with. Because I look, the market's telling you that maybe the Commanders are even just as, you know, perhaps better with Jaden Daniels in there. Um, and if you think that, I mean, we can sit here in this podcast and debate if Mariota's a significant downgrade or not. I think just because they're so similar, it's not that significant of it. It's a downgrade, but maybe not as significant as we think.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and teasing the Commanders up to maybe covering 8 points and pairing with their team, I think that might be advantageous. But yeah, I lean Bears here, but I think that there's still some intrigue. To be honest, I'm still probably gonna be heavily tuned into the game just because
Yeah,
I'd like to see how the Bears come out after a bye. I don't think they're going to be flat. I think
right.
this Bears team still has everything out in front of them. When it comes to the playoffs, they're in a very, very competitive division. I think they need to win games like this. Teams
Yeah,
got their backup quarterback in. I think the Bears have to win a game like this to keep pace. And I don't know, Christian, you're the Bears fan. You tell me, like, what was like what would you say the Bears need to reach this? Do they need to reach the playoffs this year? Do you think to say that they achieved like they met expectations? Um,
yeah. I think, yeah. If everyone was looking at the schedule at the beginning of the season, I think we all said the schedule we could very easily get 9 wins.
mhm.
And so far to date, every win that we would say we were supposed to win this year has happened, with the exception of the Colts game. But we weren't supposed to win that Rams game, so you can look at it like we still have all those wins
Yeah.
lined up. Um, I think everything comes down to the division. You can't expect to make the playoffs without at least splitting that division, going 3-3.
Mhm.
That's a tough task in the NFC North, obviously. Um, I think above 500 would be a success. I said it at the beginning of the year on the podcast. I think our 25 draft class is probably going to be the most important class to the future of this team going forward. I think that's kind of similar to how Detroit built it up, kind of similar to how
Mhm.
Houston built it up. Usually, even Green Bay with the receiving core that they've got in the last 2 drafts. Uh, I think this one, after you figured your quarterback out, is the most important
Yeah.
draft you
Yeah.
could
I
have.
can.
So exactly.
Seems like all
So
those landmark teams had a draft like that. The Texans had the
right.
Stroud and Will Anderson draft.
hmm
They got Tank Dell in that draft. The year
hmm
before they got Stingley and
Yeah.
a couple other guys. So yeah, I agree with you there. I was just wondering from like if this team went 9-8 and missed the playoffs, you
I
wouldn't
wouldn't be
consider the
mad.
season. Okay,
Not
yeah,
just because of how good the division is. I think no one
hmm
was expecting Minnesota to be at least this great defensively. Um, Obviously, I have faith in Kevin O'Connell and the offense in Minnesota, but with no Kirk Cousins and then what Beeflo is doing right now, I just didn't expect it. And to expect 4 teams out of one division to make the playoffs, I think, is kind of irrational.
Yeah.
And writing's on the wall. I mean, it's clear as day. Right now we're probably the fourth best team in our division. So that being said,
Probably the seventh best team in the conference, seventh or sixth best team in the conference. So yeah, that's crazy.
As you said, just bank wins.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all we can do.
I was just looking at the Bears' schedule after this Washington game, and it's Arizona, New England, and then you have your huge tilt where it's Green Bay, Minnesota, Detroit, and then San Francisco.
Yep, all 6
I think
divisional
you got to win. You got to win 2 of 3. I think of the next
Yep.
Washington, Arizona, New England.
Yep.
To be, then you go into those games 6 and 3, and maybe you're 7 and 6. Going into middle of December, you might be able to scrap something out of there. But definitely, I think this is a more important game, I think, to the Bears from a record keeping pace standpoint than it is for the Commanders.
Christian, do you think the Bears are going to be trying to go out and get anybody for this trade deadline? I mean, I feel like there's been a lot of talk about them, seeing how things are going to play out if that's going to dictate a move. Do you think you guys go out and get anybody?
Well, yeah, the Wyatt Teller was obviously the big name last week. Basically just got to keep an eye on the losers, I guess. But to me, I would love to upgrade, but I don't want to lose the capital that we have for the 25 draft. I've been talking to Pat for months now, and he thinks it's illogical on the Chargers standpoint, but I always felt like maybe Rashawn Slater could be on the market, considering Alt just got drafted there. Maybe we could make a move for him in the offseason. But as far as a midseason trade, I don't know if we have to go out and make a move for a Max Crosby or anything like that. Now, Myles Garrett, if you want to give me Myles Garrett, I would say yes.
Well, and that was a name I was going to float out for you, because obviously I don't know if you guys are going to go out. I don't know what we're going to do with Myles Garrett. I don't know what the market is going to be for Max Crosby. But, I mean, there's Carl Granderson for the Saints.
Yeah.
He could always be up there.
But I don't think we need an edge rusher per se. I like where we're at. I mean, Austin Booker's a rookie. I get it, but we traded for Darrell Taylor from Seattle. And then Gervon Dexter has been playing extremely well with Billings in the middle. I think my biggest concern was the interior of the defense. They've held up. I think the big question for me is obviously if that offensive line can hold up. If we could upgrade that position right away, I would love to. But like I said, unless we're talking a bookend tackle or something like that, I'd rather hold off until the offseason.
Hey, you could have Laramie Tunsil if you want. I'm kind of sick.
I'm good.
Point.
No, he's too
After
old.
hearing me talk about
for our window.
He's like 30. He's 30. Tackles play. Trent Williams is still kicking it. He's in his mid 30s.
Yeah,
he's still bludgeoning people every single Sunday.
Yeah,
I would love Trent Williams. Well, he's actually one of my favorite players in the NFL. I love watching him play because when he pulls and he just absolutely mauls DBs. It's like the coolest thing to watch.
And that's why the only bookend I could think of is Slater. Is there any other guy that? I mean, I don't know who could move and Pat. His whole thing was like, why would they ever get rid of a 25-year-old left tackle? And I completely agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
It's just with Joe Alt being there, that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah, and I feel like at least teams that are competitive like that, usually bad teams have bad tackles and aren't selling their good tackles.
Right.
And usually good teams have good tackles and they're not selling their tackles. It's just such an important position.
Exactly.
So it's one of those weird ones. Like the only last guy I could think of that was like that were the two guys that we just mentioned, Trent Williams and Laramie Tunsil, and they were both playing for really bad teams that that needed draft capital. Right. I don't think there's any teams like that in the NFL right now with a bookend left tackle that are really bad. So
right.
Onward with who you've got. I think I will say, shout out Caleb Williams. I think he's been playing much better the last couple of weeks. I think he's, from a mental perspective, the way he navigates the offense, I think they're throwing the book at him, and I think he's starting to pass it off with all flying colors. So we'll see what Shane Waldron calls game wise versus Dan Quinn. Kind of an interesting coaching matchup there too.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I like where Caleb Williams is at.
For sure. For sure. We shall see. Should be a good game. Go Bears.